Thank you, Nina. Thank you, everyone. We are running a bit late. I can see it's like 40 minutes already late. So we have about half an hour to touch on the general points of discussion. Robin, since you've prepared the questionnaire, maybe you could start.
Thank you, George. Let me just begin by saying, I mean, we've heard a lot of valuable information. Clearly, that there are many shared interests and concerns with regard to the health threats, with regard to designing and implementing solutions, and the need to build the evidence base. I think we can all share those thoughts. We have got limited time, and I will get on to the questions just in a minute, but I wanted to make sure in this final session that anyone who hadn't already had a chance to speak does have a chance, and also to remind you of Nina's point earlier today, that we greatly welcome your continuing feedback over the next few days by sending us any key publications or other sources, or indeed other thoughts that you have. We're not going to cover it all in the next 30 minutes. One other point before I get on to the policy issues, we've heard a lot about adaptation in the health sector, but of course, as Professor Papadopoulos said right at the beginning today, this EMME initiative includes many task forces in different sectors. And I think one issue that we do need to consider thinking about, particularly at the policy level, is to coordinate our recommendations for health and the actions that could be envisaged from those recommendations with recommendations coming out from the other task forces. So, for example, there's a task force on agriculture and forestry, on the urban environment, on maritime, and as we've heard today, these are all relevant to the health task force. So I encourage you to think broadly across sectors, as well as, of course, within the health sector itself. We've circulated a number of questions to you that I hope will stimulate further discussion about policy-related matters. And of course, some of you have already answered some of these questions, and that's great. I would actually add to the list one other question that I'd like to think about, and that was from our colleague in Lebanon, who added the question, well, how can policymakers be incentivized to use the scientific evidence? Essentially, we've been talking amongst ourselves, how can we produce the scientific evidence? How can we engage with policymakers? How can we integrate at national, regional, and global levels? But indeed, we can't do any of that if the policymakers aren't receptive. And I'm sure this is an issue for the next few months of the EMME initiative as you work with your governments and other groups involved in policy making. How can we encourage them to want to use the evidence that we're supplying or can produce? Having said that, to say that there's a list of questions here that we pre-circulated. I think, for example, the first, looking at the chat, one of the first questions relating health to NDCs and national health adaptation plans or other national plans. A number of you have already given examples of the way that health is covered, and I think that's great, and that will be very helpful. Certainly like to hear from others who haven't yet done that. But that really leads on to another point that I think is kind of central to this whole initiative, and indeed to the regional and global work of academies. And of course, academies are based at a national level. Now, I think it's obvious that a lot of the actions that we're talking about for stakeholders and for policymakers can and will be taken forward at the national level, NDCs, national adaptation plans, and so on. And it would be great to share and coordinate good practice in those national level actions. But in addition, the question is, what should be done at the regional level and how should it be done? So in terms of the diverse spread of geography that we've talked about today, where is added value at the regional level? Some of the health effects, for example, air pollution and infectious disease, are by definition transboundary, that they don't obviously respect national or political borders. So how could the EMME region, in conjunction with other regions, for example, the European Union, work together to identify the policy priorities for those things that are best addressed at a regional level rather than a national level? And identify such things, then who do we speak with? Clearly it's WHO and FAO and the United Nations Economic Commission, for example, all of whom have regional offices. But how do we get our recommendations and our advice to groups such as COP26, to the International Panel on Climate Change, to other intergovernmental groups? Many of you may have worked as scientists advising the IPCC, for example, or advising WHO. Well, how can we now connect those linkages in order to capitalize on the work in this region? So really, I'm very interested in your thoughts about how to bring all this up to the regional level. Perhaps stop there for a minute and see if we have any reactions.
Robin, if I may add as well to your point, to the first point of knowledge and research gaps, it has been identified by many colleagues the issue of data sharing, data availability. I think a critical point would be in order to identify policies or recommendations for policies or recommendations for action, it's important to know what kind of data we need and where these data are. So we can identify how we can access this data, because I mean it's a different access policy if it's research data produced by academic institutions. It's a different access policy when we talk and maybe involves intergovernmental committees or transboundary or intergovernmental or inter-country collaborations. If we talk about data that are produced by the health services of the countries.
Yes, indeed. In order to tackle policy at a regional level, you're quite right. We need to act in a concerted way in identifying and sharing the data, because that does two things. I think it enables us collectively to make use of the data we already have, but secondly, consequence of that, enables us to more easily identify gaps in the data. And I mean, we've heard a number of examples today of where there may be gaps in the evidence on impact. So particular vulnerable groups, for example, or particular regions in certain countries. But I think one gap that we all share is in terms of quantifying the solutions. I mean, we can talk about very likely solutions such as early warning systems or capacity building in health systems infrastructure, or modifying agricultural practices to be more climate resilient and so on. But when we have to prioritize these actions, we need to know how to rank some of them according to their quantitative influence in responding or mitigating climate change. And I think we have very little evidence in order to be able to prioritize some of these actions. We can kind of have the total list of what we want to do, but if we have inadequate resources to do everything, we need a better evidence base to guide what we're doing. And I think the lady from Serbia who gave a very comprehensive list of those actions emphasized the point that we still need the evidence to be able to prioritize and select appropriately. So who would like to say something? Okay.
I want to come back to what both of you just said. And if I'm not mistaken, and as I recall what Kostas was telling us this morning, there will be, a meeting of the heads of the governments or representative of the governments when they receive the document which the Cyprus Institute with his colleagues are preparing. And I wonder, the question, how can that reach the politicians? There, I would say there is a chance to develop a concept in the way you turn over these documents and prepare something in advance through the ministries of these governments, so that the responsible ministers, when they come, have already the chance to discuss beforehand how really to come to some conclusion, right? And I would say it would be very important that one comes together and discusses the way in which one can beforehand get in contact with politics, so that at this meeting is not only a meeting where one turned over and official pictures are taken and everybody is leaving and at the end nothing had happened, but it should, be worked out with the contact to these different representatives at the ministry who are in charge for these questions, so that what would be possible in the discussion with them to develop a document which they can approve beforehand or find a way in which they, see a way how they can act and how they can get further, let's say, interest and support from organizations like WHO or other organizations which are important. For me, it is not enough just to have these documents, turn it over and return home. Then nothing will happen. This is the usual situation in which we are. So I think there has to be a strategy developed with all the interesting information we have received, and where we see that something has to be done. And this, I would say, is another, let's say, act to do and to do some work on it, to have a successful, not only meeting, but also get politics involved. George, I don't know whether Kostas is still there with us or not, and what you think about it.
Yeah, I can't see Kostas with us. He told me he would join. He had to leave for another conference. He would join, but I can't see him now. But the point is well taken, Volker, and I mean, you're absolutely right that the policymakers and decision makers will have to be involved early on. It's one of actually my concerns, that this distinction between the scientific part and the policy part will not have this dialogue that you are suggesting here. So perhaps
I think it will be the art that we have to filter something out of this document which is attractive, which is reasonable, and which is a door opener, that they will do more than just accepting the document, but they will work on it. I mean, this is something I think which is as essential as to write all these documents which then are turned over. I mean, this is the same what we are trying to do in EASAC. I mean, we, for example, when we have certain topics, we invite representatives from the EU Commission that they participate in certain discussions, that we understand what is their issue, and then we could address the issue in the document. And this would, in some cases or in a number of cases, it was very successful that what we said was then taken by the representatives and worked on it, and then finally went into some of regulation by the EU Parliament. And I would say the same thing has to be done in the organizations you are approaching. And this is something which has to be worked on, not only to get these documents, they're all fine at the end and interesting information, but I'm afraid that's it at the end. And this is not what I think should be done. Since you have this opportunity now, since there is the official, let's say, demand by your government to do something. And as this, I would say that if one includes this government in the decision, which is now by writing and doing and finding out, I think this would be most important. Besides all the other stuff, but I mean, it was beautiful today what we heard. It's interesting to see as there are common, concepts and common ideas, which everybody has to be done with a variation, of course. But this is something which one has to stepwise to approach and to develop.
Yeah, I mean, I have some I can react to this, Volker. I fully agree, and I have more to say. But maybe we should allow our colleagues to say their
okay
what they feel as well about what we just heard from Volker and from Robin.
Yeah, I see. So I'm probably going to mispronounce your name, Professor Colliu has her hand raised. So please go ahead.
Right. Hello from me as well. Indeed, I attended all the talks very carefully because they were fantastic, and everyone carried the experience from their own country, which is very important in order to have a global idea. What actually I consider very important here in order to make good documents and catch the attention of the politicians is to make a document which is very practical. I like the one from Serbia, the approach, to be honest, like Robin said, because it analyzed the whole issue. It made biomarkers, which enabled them to follow the situation very carefully and very systematically. And then they arrived into results and conclusions. What I think is to create such a document which is practically based. And the other thing is that a way to approach politicians is to select some high income officials from the ministries, and invite them or ask them to send some of their employees in order to be taught. So it's good to do education, and these things could be created through the education by them, because everything has very good sense of logic. So it could come out of educational material, this one. So if we make them do it themselves, because they know very well their things sometimes, probably it would be much more interesting for them to adopt it at the end. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
May I add something? It's Anna.
So sorry, I see several hands up now.
I cannot put the hand up, sorry.
I can't tell who's speaking, but go ahead.
Okay, I would like, I'm Anna from Serbia, you mentioned my presentation, but I would like to share my experience implementing new initiatives or in the, I don't know, conventions or some special reports, IPCC reports, and so on. Actually, SPI do studies from known sources, as you mentioned, collecting data. And then when you have a published study, your key messages are withdrawn from this study, and we are acting as a group, as reviewers for different documents and pushing those messages into the higher level. So those messages actually went to the highest level, on global level, to the global documents, and then turned back to my national level. Even I don't have any act on this subject on my national level, going to global, and then came back to my ministry, and now some initiatives are made on that subject. This is one experience. To, I don't know, gather some on voluntary basis. We are working on also you can do some consortium of science guided by some experienced science policy person and create a very firm study with key messages and then pushing those messages on upper level maybe. And another experience which is can be used as a similar approach to vector-borne diseases problem related to climate change is also I'm acting as a dust transport scientist and involved in several UN organizations, and they actually were pushed to make a consortia of different UN organizations, WMO, WHO, UNCCT, UNEP, and so on, to deal with the dust problem, which would be also some consortia would be needed for the to deal with the vector-borne disease problem because it's transboundary. So these are just two experiences I would like to share if it is applicable in this subject. And as I noticed in the whole region, two main problems are the heat waves and vector-borne diseases. This is common for everyone. So maybe also trying to push the WMO to increase some actions on building some, I don't know, advisory system for warnings in the region. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful input. I see hands raised from Professor Suleiman and Saliba. I get your name back. Professor Suleiman, could you start? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, the effects of climate change and with diseases, they always have the economical impact. And if we combine both control of the effects of climate change and economy, agriculture, water resources, and so on, so we'll have a wider umbrella that we are dealing with rather than having to address climate change effects and resilience and so on. So the wider umbrella of a One Health component should be stressed so that we can deal with all of the problems at the same time with a multidisciplinarity that would benefit all stakeholders. I suggest that we use a multidisciplinary approach towards the climate change thing, and it is working in other setups. Like, for example, we have antibiotic resistance, and we are addressing it under the umbrella of One Health component because it's a problem in animals, in humans, in food products, in meat, in whatever, livelihoods, and so on. So let us stress One Health approach for our addressing of climate change and diseases, health and diseases, other than having health addressed as a sanitation thing only. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very good points, and both that One Health and about discussing the health impacts and the response to those health impacts in health economic terms, as well as public health burden. Problem is that there's a great disparity between countries in their health economic approaches to defining the cost of a life saved or whatever. But in principle, that's a great suggestion. So Professor Saliba, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I would like to build on what my colleague proposed, is that we need to come up with a way to quantify solutions, and if we could come up with a certain index that will rank countries in the region, I think we have to come up with unusual or out-of-the-box measures, because the situation, as we heard from all the participants today, is very alarming. So I don't think we need to settle for a report or recommendations and to ask for more science. I think the science has been established that this region is going to be suffering probably a lot from climate change. And I would like us to think about a way to not incentivize, somehow push the envelope of the policymakers to act on this by creating some type of an index that will probably shame people who do not come with viable solutions. I'm trying to be more forceful than being than just thinking about recommendations for the coming event that we're preparing.
What kind of this is George Najad. What kind of I switched off my camera because my bandwidth was not very good. What kind of index do you envision? Because I mean, policymakers mostly talk on economic terms. So is that what you envision?
Probably we can come up with a carbon footprint index, something that will quantify solutions. Again, I mean, I think Volker proposed this quantifying solution mechanism that is extremely important. And it could be on science that we already know, like low carbon index, one possibility, or it could be economic.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. Am I missing anyone? Anyone new? Okay, so we're now according to my timetable, now running over by 5 minutes. George, how much longer do we have for our session? Should we close now, or do you want further discussion?
I think it would be a pity to close now, Robin. I think we are getting into the very interesting discussion, so possibly we should allow a little bit more and then take it as it comes. I mean, allow another 15-20 minutes and then we close then.
Okay, well, let me try a new question, which some of you have already provided valuable information on. Of course, trying to engage with policymakers, however we think we can do it, will also be helped by, I think our experience in the Academy shows us, engaging with the public. These are obviously political decisions. So, and it comes back again to our colleague from Lebanon. How can we as a scientific community work harder to engage with the wider community, public at large, other stakeholders, in order to understand their issues, in order to educate where we need to, in order to tackle misinformation, and in order to build the citizens' involvement in wanting to drive new policy options. You know, we've heard about the great enthusiasm of the younger generation in helping to raise the visibility of some climate change issues with politicians. Well, how can we, as it were, a more established scientific community, also energize the public to engage in this policy context?
I could say something here because you know, I turned my life into a scholar activist because of the local context. Again, and I'm sorry to on behalf of my country, who is now running you know, so many problems on corruption and not being able to cater to the population's need. And that's why we reverted back to the communities and to the youth in order for them to raise their voices and claim their human rights. And so, in my opinion, science has fallen short in creating the low-cost technology to put in the hands of the community, so that the community is more aware of the science that is happening around them. And once they know, and once you give them the tools and the knowledge that, you know, about the science that they need to know, they become the people who will hold the politicians accountable. At the end of the day, politicians cannot survive if they don't respond to their community. So as scientists, we owe it to the community, especially in places where most of us live in the I speak about Lebanon, where we live without a government. We owe it to our community to put the science that we produce in their hands so that they are empowered to claim their rights and to claim for a change. And so this you know, the idea of producing more top-notch science is not going to help us change climate change. I think we need to mobilize the youth. We need to encourage the youth to speak up, and we need more hands-on experiments with the community so that the community is able to demand and drive the change. And this has been really, you know, possible with us by mobilizing all social media outlets and also teaming up with radios and televisions. And I think we have a powerful tool. The social media is a powerful tool to be able to use it. And the best example that I really admire her efforts, it's Dr. Maria Naira in WHO, who has done a marvelous job in raising you know, the bar about, not the bar, in raising the bar about awareness and making everyone aware of the air pollution problems.
Thank you.
This is great, yeah, and I fully agree. Let me also add that in this particular case of the CCI of the initiative, we have a fantastic opportunity because it has been generated. I mean, the initiative has been taken by the country, and before it was launched, the country had the buying of the countries of the EMME region, as they are listed there, the 14 EMME regions. So we have a dialogue that's going on with the politicians. I mean, an instrument to create this dialogue with the politicians. And I will go back to what Volker said initially, that maybe we need to grasp this opportunity of this instrument and take it further and capitalize on it and engage the politicians even before, or the policymakers, let's say, even before we end up with a report from the scientific community. And the vehicle, the tool and the force that the public is generating is very important at that stage. So I would agree very much with what you're saying, Jack.
If I might, does anyone else want to speak at the moment? If I might follow up at the point that George was making, and that's following a point that Volker was making about the need for early and sustained contact with policymakers in order to develop impact. And coming back also to the point from our work with EASAC, that we already have good relationships with a lot of the various policymakers in the European Union. Now, this question, maybe this is question number 6. It might be more interesting to some of you than others, because some of you are part of the European Union, some of course aren't, and some of us, I think it's probably just me in the UK, used to be part of the European Union and aren't now. But anyway, the question is, can you advise on from the things we talked about today, what in particular it would be useful to bring to the attention of policymakers in the European Union. Clearly, the EMME initiative has its own focus on policymakers in the EMME area, but the European Union is looking for, I think, ideas for a more substantial neighbourhood policy, and I think climate change, is a core part of that. So it would be great to be able to feed some of the ideas from this discussion today, and indeed from the task force more generally, through the good contacts we have in the European Union. But what would be most, do you think, would be most attractive to European Union policymakers to hear? You may want to think about that a little bit longer and write to me if you're so kind. Okay, who have we got? Volker, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick this up what you say, Robin. And I think maybe it would be good if we all go home and think about it. What would be for our own country the most, important suggestion we could give? And then we send it to George, and then we can filter it out and see what would be appropriate. I think those politicians who are coming from different countries, and it could well be that the different countries have a different priority. And if one picks this up and would give to this priority some comments, then one would have a much better chance for acceptance. And since these countries, we have heard as representation who are here today, they probably know much better what is good for their own country. And if we would have a list, then we could see at the end, how can one put this together? And with a short document for turning it over to politician, plus another document which is more science driven, I would say we would have a good chance to get some sort of acceptance and maybe some momentum to take off, from which on then, further developments can be seen or can be pushed.
Thank you. Right, I think that we probably are coming to the end of our active discussion period. In terms of follow-up and reflection on what we've heard, what we've talked about today, and the interest that has emerged, really I just want to emphasize 2 points that we've already heard about. One is this is an important year for climate change and for climate change and health discussions at the policy level through COP26. As Andy Haynes said right at the beginning, this is probably the first COP meeting where public health is centre stage. It never has been before. It is now, partly because of the evidence for climate effects on health, and partly, I think, because health is more centre stage in all political discussions at the moment, and of course, we thank COVID for that. So it is an important year for the things we're talking about, and it would be great to share ideas to how we can use our work and our discussions to feed into international discussions such as COP26, but also, of course, that there are other regional discussions. And I do just want to remind you that there's a very important regional discussion for the Eastern Mediterranean later this month, where the WHO regional consultation on climate and health is being held May the 23rd. You can register for that. It's not clear, I think, yet what the programme is. Perhaps some of you know more than I do. But certainly, if you would like to continue the discussion in the Eastern Mediterranean area to inform the UN and other interested parties, then I would urge you to register and engage actively with the WHO regional consultation. So thank you. And yes, again, Nina has put up the link to that. Unfortunately, it's a Sunday, if that makes any difference. Anyway, I think we are coming to the end of our discussion, unless anybody else would like to say something, raise a new point, or go back to an old point, you're very welcome. But as I say, certainly encourage you to continue following up by email or any other route. I guess.
So, Robin,
George, can I just ask that your task force report will be finalised quite soon?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that it would be possible to circulate a final copy to all the participants in this meeting when it's possible to do so.
Absolutely, yeah. Possibly Marco can tell us a bit the deadlines.
Yeah.
Marco, what are the deadlines for finalization of the report?
Hi, everybody. Before I go into the deadlines, there is one more point I wanted to make, and is that when you write your recommendations and when you brainstorm and send us whatever it is you're going to send us, I will encourage you to think beyond just policy in the political sense. As Dr. Saliba said, I think there is a space now also for thinking as regional scientists and proposing scientific initiatives that might actually, if not immediately, have later on a policy impact. And I'm saying this because I know, coming from South America, I know that dealing with politicians is always short-term, short-lived, it's difficult, and then when you achieve something, politicians change and you lose continuity. What we have to do is try to achieve some kind of initiative that has a longer lasting effect so that we can outlive whichever the local politician of turn is today. And for this, of course, education is one way of thinking, but also I think we can, as scientists, propose initiatives that might have a regional reach, and that we can actually make a reality. I'm working in the field of vector biology, for example, and I've read propositions by other members. Dr. Shlomi Tzpas, for example, has suggested the creation of a regional scientific body that will help tracking the spread of vectors, for example. And when you write your recommendations, think also along these lines, not only political policy, but also what can scientists in the region do? Because I think that might actually be a more long-term solution to the problems that we're looking for. And now, when it comes to the report, so the deadline of the report is a bit of a moving goal. We go by the original deadline. We should be already having a finalized draft, which is not the case, and I know of good source that many of the task forces, of the other 13 or 14 task forces, don't have the finalized draft yet. We are hoping to, with your input, the input from this workshop and whatever people can send us in the next coming weeks, we are hoping that within probably a month to a month and a half, we should have a polished second draft version, which should include the policy sections and hopefully also the graphic material. So I am thinking probably around mid-June, but this is my estimate. It's not an official estimate for the task force. Unfortunately, we don't have the official people of the task force here with us. But I think we still have about a month and a half to polish these ideas and produce a more refined report. And of course, to anyone who is willing to contribute, we are welcome. If you received a copy of the report and you haven't sent your comments, there is still time to make that reach us. So just feel free to send that to me or to Camille, and your comments will certainly be included in the upcoming drafts.
And also, I may add also, Marco, that if you think that someone else from the community, the Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East community, but even beyond that, could contribute to this report, have something useful to say in this report, please let us know, or recommend them to us, so that we can get in touch. It's important to be as inclusive as possible. This will be the power of this initiative. Essentially, if we make it very inclusive, then it will be heard.
Absolutely, George. And as I mentioned during my presentation, we're constantly looking for new members of the task force. We recently have been talking to 2 new potential members. One of them was already accepted. So just so that, if I might just quickly share my screen with you, I just want to make a very brief point. And is that this is the task force. the countries of the task force, and the countries in blue are the countries. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The countries in blue are the countries for which we have currently members in the task force, but all the countries in black are places where we are missing members. And if you know any scientist or any policymaker that is working, has experience in these countries, Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, or the United Arab Emirates, we'll be more than grateful if you can put us in contact so that we can try to get them involved as well. Because being as inclusive as possible, it's important not only to be complete, but also to have a better chance for our recommendations to be adopted by the countries on a wider scale possible. Thank you very much.
Okay, George, are we done then? I think.
Yeah,
we've had a long day, and
Excuse me.
there's further burning topics to discuss.
Yeah.
I think probably we're coming to a natural end. Do you think?
Yes, someone is. I can't see. Someone was trying to say something.
Oh,
It is me, I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hi, sorry. Yeah.
I am from Sudan and I don't see our name, our country on the list. Can you include us on the list?
Well,
Sudan.
yeah. So the definition of the EMME region does not include Sudan. So
But we are with the EMRO.
yes, it's different than the AMRO and it's different than the MENA. It has to. I'm not sure what is the defining boundary, but let us ask the organizers how this might be possible. Let us do that, and we'll get back to you.
Sure, thank you.
So it's meant to be 14 countries, those that Marco has shown, but I don't know how these are defined. As I said, neither the MENA nor the AMRO.
So just if I might add something. So unfortunately, we cannot change the official definition of the Eastern Mediterranean Middle East for this initiative because this is a standardized definition that is being used by all, not only our task force, but all the other task force are using the same definition. However, even though we cannot include specific countries, we could include people working in countries that are related to the area as international experts, if the contribution can be applied regionally. I mean, we cannot include somebody who can only talk about a country that is not part of the EMME, but if the contribution applies in a regional scale, then there is a chance that we can include individuals from different countries as international experts on the region as well.
Okay.
Yeah, especially in this case where most of the participants are from the neighboring region. So I think it does make sense to do expand it as international experts. I thought that someone else said something as well. No, so in that case, maybe I should also thank you for this excellent scientific day. That was fantastic. It was really interesting. I will have something in the chat. Yes, Professor Najat Saliba is from Lebanon and she presented an excellent presentation today. Yeah, that's true. And actually, I was thinking the same. So maybe we should, Najat, maybe we should get in touch after this and see whether we had some issues in the past to have colleagues from Lebanon. So maybe we should get in touch after that to discuss whether we can have the contributions from Lebanon.
We are in conversations with Dr. Saliba,
Okay.
and we already had a meeting with her, and so we are polishing those political issues that you mentioned, but we're working on it.
Okay, great. Great. So thank you very much, everyone. That was a great day. Again, thank you very much, Robin. Thank you, Nina. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. So we will follow up. We will send you what we are preparing, and we're sure we can get the great feedback from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So.